You want to know about love? Real love? Not the fairy tales they sell in bookstores or the fantasies Hollywood peddles. I'm talking about the kind of love that changes everything, the kind that saves souls and builds families from the ashes of broken dreams. I am Isabella Castellano, and I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched strong women crumble and broken ones rise like phoenixes. But nothing prepared me for watching Victoria Romano transform from the hardest woman I'd ever mentored into someone who could weep over a child's scraped knee. This is their story. Victoria's and Sophia's. But it's also mine because sometimes love needs a guide, and sometimes even the strongest women need someone to show them the way home.
Before we continue with the story, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more audiobooks from Lover's Cove. It may be a little task for you, but it means the world to us. It tells us we have people out there who our stories resonate with. Thank you and enjoy.
Victoria's courtship of Sophia was like watching a master painter work with colors she'd never used before. Everything Victoria knew about seduction, about getting what she wanted, had to be relearned for this stubborn, magnificent woman who remained utterly unimpressed by wealth and power. The flowers were just the beginning. Victoria discovered that Sophia's favorite color was the deep blue of pre-dawn sky, not from asking, but from noticing the one personal item in her locker, a small ceramic mug that shade of blue. So she filled Sophia's locker with blue hydrangeas. Sophia threw them away. She learned that Sophia loved old jazz, heard her humming Ella Fitzgerald during a particularly long shift. Victoria hired a jazz quartet to play in the hospital lobby during Sophia's lunch break. Sophia walked right past them without stopping. "She hates me," Victoria said during one of our weekly dinners, poking at her osso buco like a petulant child. "She doesn't trust you," I corrected. "There's a difference." And there was. I could see it in the way Sophia watched Victoria when she thought no one was looking. The attraction was there, electric and undeniable, but so was the fear. Sophia had built walls around herself and her son, and she wasn't about to let some mysterious woman with expensive tastes tear them down. The breakthrough came, as these things often do, by accident. Victoria had been visiting a business associate at the hospital when she overheard two doctors discussing a patient, a little girl whose parents couldn't afford the surgery she needed. Without thinking, Victoria walked into the administrator's office and paid for everything. The surgery, the recovery, the follow-up care. All of it. She didn't know Sophia was watching from the doorway. "Why did you do that?" Sophia asked her later, catching Victoria in the parking garage. For once, Victoria had no smooth answer, no calculated response. She reminded me of someone I used to know. It was the first completely honest thing Victoria had said to her, and Sophia heard it. I could tell because she didn't walk away immediately. "You don't give up, do you?" Sophia said, and there was something almost like admiration in her voice. "Not when it matters," Victoria replied. That night, Sophia didn't throw away the single white rose Victoria left on her car. It was progress. But real change came the night Victoria showed up at the hospital bleeding and trying to pretend she wasn't in pain. She'd been caught in the crossfire of someone else's stupidity. Nothing serious, just a graze along her ribs, but she'd come to Sophia instinctively. I wasn't there, but Victoria told me about it later, how Sophia had taken charge with quiet efficiency, cleaning the wound while lecturing Victoria about the dangers of whatever life she was living. "She was so gentle," Victoria whispered, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Her hands were shaking, but she was so gentle with me." That was the night Sophia first touched Victoria with tenderness instead of professional distance. And Victoria, who hadn't let herself be vulnerable with anyone since she was a child, found herself leaning into that touch like a flower turning toward the sun. But it was also the night Sophia realized that Victoria's world was dangerous in ways she'd only imagined. When Victoria finally left, stitched up and bandaged, Sophia stood in her treatment room and wept for reasons she couldn't name. Love was coming for both of them, whether they wanted it or not. Everything changed the day Victoria met Marcus. I've seen Victoria negotiate with hardened criminals, face down federal agents, and stand before judges without flinching. But put her in a room with one 6-year-old boy and she was utterly defenseless. It happened because Sophia's babysitter canceled at the last minute, and there was an emergency at the hospital she couldn't ignore. Victoria, who had been lurking around the hospital for days trying to catch glimpses of Sophia, overheard her frantic phone calls. "I'll watch him," Victoria said, and I swear Sophia nearly dropped her phone. "Absolutely not. I'm harmless to children." "You're not harmless to anyone." But desperation won, as it often does. Sophia brought Marcus to the hospital, settled him in an empty room with coloring books and crackers, and left Victoria with strict instructions not to corrupt her child in any way. Marcus took one look at Victoria, really looked at her, and said, "You're sad." Out of the mouths of babes. Victoria later told me it was like being seen by someone who didn't know enough to be afraid of her, who looked right through all her careful armor to the lonely woman underneath. "Why are you sad?" Marcus asked, holding up a purple crayon like it might hold the answer to everything. "I don't know," Victoria admitted, and it was the most honest she'd been in years. They colored together for 3 hours. Marcus chattering about his favorite dinosaurs, his mother's terrible cooking, how he wanted to be a doctor like the nice people at the hospital when he grew up. Victoria listened with the intensity she usually reserved for million-dollar deals, asking questions and actually caring about the answers. When Sophia returned, she found them building a tower out of medical supply boxes, Victoria in her expensive suit sitting cross-legged on the floor like she'd been doing it all her life. "Mama, this is Victoria," Marcus announced. "She doesn't know how to make dinosaur noises, but she's learning." Sophia watched Victoria attempt a pterodactyl screech and something shifted in her expression. For the first time, she saw Victoria not as a threat or a mystery, but as a woman trying very hard to connect with her son. That night, Sophia called me. I was surprised. We'd never spoken directly, though I'd been keeping careful track of her through my networks. "Mrs. Castellano," she said, and her voice was soft and uncertain. "I know who you are, and I think I know what Victoria used to be. I need to understand what she is now." I invited her for tea the next afternoon, a proper sit-down where I could take the measure of this woman who'd brought Victoria Romano to her knees. Sophia arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple blue dress that made her eyes look like deep water. She was nervous but determined, the kind of woman who faced her fears head-on rather than running from them. "She's different with Marcus," Sophia said after we'd settled with our tea. "I've never seen anyone take to him so naturally." "Children see truth," I replied. "They haven't learned to look away from it yet." "But what's the truth about Victoria?" "Because I'm falling in love with someone I don't understand, and I have a son to protect." The honesty in that statement took my breath away. No games, no pretense, just a mother's heart laid bare. I told her what I could, how Victoria had inherited her father's empire but built something legitimate from it, how she'd never hurt anyone who didn't hurt her first, how she'd spent years trying to wash the blood from her family's legacy. "She's never loved anyone before," I said gently. "Not the way she loves you and Marcus. It terrifies her." "It terrifies me too," Sophia admitted. "But Marcus asks about her every day." He drew her a picture of a dinosaur. She's already part of his world." That evening, Sophia let Victoria stay for dinner. Just frozen pizza heated up in her tiny kitchen, but Victoria ate it like it was a feast. Marcus insisted on sitting in Victoria's lap while they watched cartoons, and Sophia watched them both with wonder and worry in equal measure. Later, after Marcus was asleep, Sophia and Victoria sat on the porch in the kind of comfortable silence that comes when people are beginning to understand each other. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria said quietly. "Do what?" "Be normal. Be safe. Be the kind of person who deserves this." Sophia studied Victoria's profile in the porch light, seeing past the expensive clothes and perfect makeup to the woman underneath. Maybe you don't have to be perfect, Sophia said. Maybe you just have to be real. That night, for the first time, Victoria slept without nightmares. The truth came out the way truth always does, at the worst possible moment when everything was finally falling into place. Victoria had been working so hard to be normal, to be worthy of Sophia and Marcus. She'd learned to cook simple meals, to help with homework, to tie small tennis shoes and read bedtime stories with voices for all the different characters. For 3 beautiful months, she'd been building a life she'd never imagined possible. But the past is never really past, is it? Especially not in our world. It started with a photograph that fell out of an old book. Marcus had been helping Victoria organize Sophia's bookshelf, really just making a mess while Victoria pretended to be stern about it, when a picture fluttered to the floor. The photo showed a young man in scrubs, laughing at something off camera. Marcus picked it up with the careful reverence children use for things they sense are important. "That's Uncle Marco," Marcus said quietly. "He died before I was born, but Mama says he would have loved me very much." Victoria's world stopped. Marco. Marcus. The child was named for his uncle, and Victoria knew that face as well as her own reflection. Marco Reyes had been her closest friend, her conscience, the one person who'd seen good in her when she couldn't see it in herself. The room spun around Victoria as memories crashed over her like a tide. Marco, patching up her wounds after particularly dangerous encounters. Marco, begging her to leave the life before it destroyed her. Marco, who'd made her promise to look after his sister if anything ever happened to him. His sister. Sophia. Victoria excused herself and stumbled to the bathroom, where she was quietly sick while the weight of revelation crushed down on her. She'd been so careful to research Sophia's background, but she'd missed the connection that mattered most. Marco had never talked much about his family, too protective, too worried about their safety. But he'd made Victoria promise. And she'd forgotten, caught up in building her legitimate empire, in trying to wash her hands clean of blood that would never come off. That night, after Marcus was asleep, Victoria tried to tell Sophia the truth. She got as far as, "I knew your brother," before Sophia's face went white. "You knew Marco?" Victoria nodded, unable to speak past the guilt that was choking her. "How?" Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. And that's when everything fell apart. The story came out in pieces. How Marco had been treating victims from Victoria's world, how he tried to save everyone who crossed his path, how he died because he trusted the wrong person with the wrong information. "He talked about you," Victoria said desperately. "He said you were studying to be a nurse, that you were brave and stubborn and—" "Get out." The words hit Victoria like bullets. Sophia's face had gone stone cold, all the warmth and trust of the past months crystallizing into something hard and brittle. "Sophia, please let me explain. Get out of my house. Stay away from my son. Stay away from me." Victoria left, but not before she saw Marcus peeking around the corner, confusion and fear written across his small face. That image would haunt her dreams for weeks. The next morning, Sophia called in sick to work for the first time in years and spent the day crying in her empty house. The flowers Victoria had brought her, the little gifts, the patient way she'd learned to braid Sophia's hair, all of it felt tainted now, like Victoria had been playing some elaborate long game for reasons Sophia couldn't understand. But children see truth, remember? That afternoon, Marcus climbed into Sophia's lap and asked the question that broke her heart. "Is Victoria coming back?" "I don't think so, baby." "Did she do something bad?" Sophia looked into her son's eyes so much like her brother's, and struggled to find an answer. Had Victoria done something bad? Or had she simply been part of a world that had taken Marco away? "It's complicated," Sophia said finally, which is what adults say when they don't know how to explain that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the spaces between different worlds. Meanwhile, Victoria was falling apart in ways she'd never allowed herself to fall apart before. She'd learned to need Sophia and Marcus, had built her entire sense of worth around being worthy of them, and now that foundation was gone. She sat in her empty penthouse, surrounded by luxury that meant nothing, and realized that she'd rather have Sophia's tiny kitchen and Marcus's dinosaur drawings than all the money and power she'd accumulated. But wanting something and deserving it are different things. Victoria had spent her whole life taking what she wanted, and now she had to learn the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes love means letting go. It would take weeks for her to realize that wasn't what Marco would have wanted for any of them. Love doesn't die easily, even when it should. For 2 weeks, Victoria honored Sophia's wishes. She stayed away from the hospital, away from their neighborhood, away from everything that might remind Sophia of the betrayal she felt. But every day she called me, and every day she sounded a little more broken. "I should leave town," Victoria said during one of our conversations. "Maybe if I'm not here, she can forget about me." "And Marcus?" I asked. "Can he forget about you too?" That was the cruelest truth of all. Marcus was heartbroken. Sophia told me later that he cried for Victoria every night, asked where she was, why she wasn't coming to read stories anymore. Children don't understand the complexities of adult relationships. They only know when someone they love disappears from their world. Sophia was struggling too, though she tried to hide it. She threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts to avoid being home in the evenings when Victoria used to visit. But I saw her sometimes in the hospital corridors, and she looked like a woman trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice while her heart screamed otherwise. The turning point came when Marcus got sick. It wasn't serious, just a fever and cough that had Sophia worried enough to bring him to the emergency room. But while she was filling out paperwork, Marcus spotted Victoria across the waiting area. Victoria was there visiting another patient, someone from her business dealings who'd been injured. She froze when she saw Marcus, clearly torn between approaching and respecting Sophia's boundaries. Marcus made the decision for her. He broke away from Sophia and ran straight into Victoria's arms. "Victoria, you came back." The reunion was heartbreaking and beautiful. Victoria held Marcus like he was made of spun glass, tears streaming down her face as he babbled about missing her, about the new dinosaur book he wanted to show her, about how his mama had been sad since Victoria went away. Sophia watched from across the room, her heart at war with itself. Part of her wanted to tear Marcus away, to protect him from this woman who'd lied to them both. But the larger part, the part that had been dying slowly for 2 weeks, recognized the truth in front of her. Victoria wasn't performing for anyone's benefit. She wasn't playing a game or working an angle. She was simply a woman who loved a little boy and was trying not to cry in a hospital waiting room because she'd missed him so much. That night, after Marcus was pronounced healthy and sent home with instructions to rest, Sophia called Victoria. "We need to talk." They met at a park near Sophia's house, neutral ground where they could speak honestly without the weight of past intimacies or future possibilities pressing down on them. "I loved him," Sophia said without preamble. "Marco was the best person I've ever known. He died trying to save people who didn't deserve saving, and I've hated your world for taking him away from me." Victoria listened without defending herself, letting Sophia's pain wash over her like she deserved. "But Marcus loves you," Sophia continued, her voice breaking slightly. "And I love you too. I don't want to, but I do." "I loved him too," Victoria said quietly. "Marco saved me in more ways than I can count. He made me promise to look after you if anything happened to him, and I forgot that promise until it was too late. I got so caught up in wanting you for myself that I forgot I was supposed to be protecting you for him." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the empty swings move in the evening breeze. "I can't go back to who I was before," Victoria said finally. "I can't unknow what it feels like to read bedtime stories and help with homework and wake up next to someone who sees good in me. Even if you can never forgive me, I can't go back." "I don't want you to go back," Sophia whispered. I want I want to try. But I need to know that you're choosing us, not just running from something else. That's when Victoria made the decision that would change everything. I'm getting out completely, she said. All of it. The businesses, the connections, everything that ties me to that world. I want to build something clean with you and Marcus. Victoria, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Not for you, though I'd do anything for you. For me. Because I can't be the person Marco believed I could be while I'm still holding on to pieces of who I used to be. The transition wasn't easy. Extracting yourself from our world never is, even when you're doing it legitimately. There were meetings, negotiations, debts to be settled and promises to be made. Victoria had to prove to people who'd known her for decades that she was serious about walking away. But through it all, Sophia was there. Not just waiting for Victoria to finish cleaning up her past, but actively helping her build a future. She encouraged Victoria through the difficult conversations, celebrated each severed tie, and slowly began to trust that this change was real and permanent. And Marcus. Marcus was just happy to have Victoria back, to show off his new drawings and share his dreams about becoming a doctor like his Uncle Marco. The three of them began to heal together, building something new on the foundation of honesty and choice rather than secrets and circumstances. Love, I've learned, is not just about the grand gestures and passionate declarations. It's about learning to live with someone else's quirks, to build routines that work for everyone, to find joy in the smallest shared moments. Victoria had to learn how to be domestic, and it was both hilarious and heartwarming to watch. The first time she tried to make breakfast for Marcus, she burned the pancakes so badly that the smoke alarm woke the entire building. Marcus, ever diplomatic, ate them anyway and declared they were crunchy in a good way. She approached household tasks with the same intensity she'd once brought to business negotiations. Grocery shopping became a military operation, complete with lists organized by aisle and backup plans for out-of-stock items. Sophia would find Victoria studying parenting books like they contained state secrets, taking notes in the margins and cross-referencing advice from multiple sources. You don't have to be perfect, Sophia would tell her, finding Victoria reorganizing the sock drawer for the third time that week. I don't know how to be imperfect with things that matter, Victoria would reply, and Sophia's heart would break a little more for this woman who'd never learned to fail safely. But slowly, Victoria began to understand that love wasn't about performing perfection. It was about showing up consistently, even when you got things wrong. The night Marcus had a nightmare and crawled into bed between them, Victoria didn't know what to do. She lay rigid, afraid to move and wake him, while Sophia slept peacefully with Marcus curled against her side. You can hold him, Sophia murmured without opening her eyes. He wants you to. Victoria carefully wrapped her arm around the sleeping child, and when Marcus unconsciously snuggled closer, she finally understood what home felt like. There were challenges, of course. Victoria's past cast long shadows that couldn't be wished away. There were former associates who didn't understand her withdrawal, who saw her new life as a weakness to be exploited. Sophia had to learn to live with security systems and careful routines, to understand that some precautions weren't paranoia but necessary protection for their family. The hardest moment came when Marcus asked why Victoria never talked about her own family. They were having dinner, takeout from the Chinese place down the street because Victoria's attempt at homemade lo mein had been a disaster, when Marcus suddenly looked up from his noodles. Victoria, where's your mama and papa? The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Victoria set down her chopsticks and looked at this child who asked such simple questions that required such complex answers. They died when I was young, she said finally. Much younger than you are now. Who took care of you? Another loaded question from innocent lips. Victoria glanced at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly. I learned to take care of myself, Victoria said, but I wasn't very good at it for a long time. I made a lot of mistakes. Marcus considered this with the seriousness children bring to important revelations. But you're good at taking care of us now, he said matter-of-factly. And we take care of you too. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. This child understood something about family that had taken Victoria 40 years to learn, that it's not about being perfect, it's about being present. That night, after Marcus was asleep, Victoria told Sophia stories she'd never shared with anyone. About growing up in the system, bouncing between foster homes and group facilities. About learning to trust no one, to take what you needed before someone else took it from you. About how survival had been her only goal for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to truly live. Sophia listened without judgment, stroking Victoria's hair as the stories poured out like poison from an old wound. I understand now, Sophia said when Victoria finally fell quiet. Why you approach everything like it might disappear. Why you try so hard to be perfect for us. I can't lose this, Victoria whispered. I can't lose you and Marcus. I wouldn't survive it. You're not going to lose us, Sophia said firmly. But you have to trust that, Victoria. You have to stop waiting for us to leave. Learning to trust took time. Victoria would wake up some mornings convinced that Sophia would come to her senses and realize she deserved better. She'd find excuses to come home early from work, just to make sure they were still there, still real, still hers. But gradually the panic faded, replaced by something steadier, deeper. The quiet confidence that comes from being chosen every day, not just once in a moment of passion, but repeatedly in 1,000 small decisions. The night Sophia asked Victoria to move in officially, not just staying most nights but actually combining their lives, Victoria cried. Not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being wanted not despite her flaws but including them. Are you sure? Victoria asked, even as she held the key Sophia had given her. I've never been more sure of anything, Sophia replied, and sealed it with a kiss that tasted like promise and forever. Every love story has its tests, moments when the foundation you've built gets shaken and you have to choose whether to rebuild or walk away. For Victoria and Sophia, that test came in the form of Victoria's former business partner, a man named Alessandro who couldn't accept that Victoria had truly left their world behind. It started small, phone calls at odd hours that Victoria wouldn't answer, flowers delivered to the hospital with cards that made Sophia's blood run cold. Alessandro was sending a message. Victoria might think she was out, but the life would always be able to reach her. Victoria tried to handle it quietly, meeting with Alessandro to make it clear that her retirement was permanent and non-negotiable. But men like Alessandro don't build their reputations by accepting no for an answer. The breaking point came when Marcus's school called to say a man had been asking questions about him. What time he was dismissed, who usually picked him up, whether he had any allergies. The school had followed protocol and refused to give information, but the message was clear. That night, Victoria sat at Sophia's kitchen table with her head in her hands, looking more defeated than Sophia had ever seen her. I should leave, Victoria said quietly. I should disappear, and you and Marcus should move somewhere safe, somewhere my past can't touch you. No. Sophia's voice was steel. Absolutely not. Sophia, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You think running away will solve this, but it won't. He'll keep looking for ways to hurt you, and that means he'll keep looking for us. The only way to end this is to face it. Victoria looked up, hope and terror warring in her expression. You're willing to fight for this? For us. Victoria Romano, I have spent the last 6 months watching you learn to be a mother to my son, watching you build a life you never thought you deserved. If you think I'm going to let some small-minded man with a grudge destroy that, you don't know me very well. What followed was the most frightening and empowering week of their lives. Victoria, with my help and guidance, orchestrated a final confrontation with Alessandro. Not the violent kind that might have happened in the old days, but a careful demonstration of just how much power she still wielded when she chose to use it. The details aren't important. What matters is that Alessandro learned that Victoria's withdrawal from active business didn't make her weak, it made her dangerous in different ways. When someone builds a legitimate empire and then uses those resources to protect their family, they have tools that pure criminals lack. By the end of that week, Alessandro had decided that pursuing Victoria was bad for his health and his business interests. The threats stopped, the flowers stopped, and Marcus went back to school without bodyguards shadowing his every step. But the experience changed something fundamental in their relationship. Sophia had seen Victoria's strength when it was directed at protecting their family, and Victoria had seen Sophia's courage when everything they'd built was threatened. "I'm not afraid of your past anymore," Sophia told Victoria as they lay in bed that night, finally able to relax after days of tension. "I understand now that it made you strong enough to protect us. And I understand that you're not going anywhere," Victoria replied, pulling Sophia closer. "Even when things get scary, even when it would be easier to leave, you're going to stay and fight." They made love that night with an intensity born not just of passion, but of gratitude, for finding each other, for surviving the test, for building something strong enough to weather any storm. The next morning, Marcus bounced into their bedroom as usual, chattering about his plans for the day. But as he crawled between them for their morning cuddle, he looked up at Victoria with unusual seriousness. "Victoria, are you and Mama going to get married?" Victoria nearly choked on her surprise, while Sophia tried to hide her smile behind her coffee mug. "Would you like us to get married?" Victoria asked carefully. Marcus considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Yes," he decided. "Then you'd be my mama too, officially. And nobody could make you go away." The wisdom of children strikes again. Because that's what marriage would mean to Marcus. Not flowers and white dresses and parties, but the security of knowing his family was permanent. Victoria looked at Sophia over Marcus's head, a question in her eyes. Sophia's smile was radiant. "I think that's the best proposal I've ever heard." Victoria approached proposing to Sophia with the same meticulous planning she'd once brought to hostile takeovers, but with entirely different stakes. This wasn't about winning or acquiring something. It was about offering everything she had and hoping it would be enough. She spent weeks consulting with Marcus, who took his role as co-conspirator very seriously. Together, they planned something that would be meaningful to Sophia without being overwhelming, romantic without being ostentatious. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Victoria would recreate their first real moment of connection. That night in the hospital when Sophia had cleaned Victoria's wound and they'd talked honestly for the first time. But instead of violence bringing them together, it would be love keeping them together. Victoria arranged for a private dinner in the hospital's old chapel, a space that was no longer used for services but maintained its quiet, sacred atmosphere. She had it filled with the blue hydrangeas Sophia had once thrown away, but arranged now with the kind of thoughtful beauty that spoke of genuine care rather than desperate pursuit. The hardest part was getting Sophia there without raising suspicion. Victoria enlisted Rebecca, Sophia's cousin and fellow nurse, who told Sophia she needed help moving some boxes in the old chapel after their shift ended. When Sophia pushed open the heavy wooden doors, expecting to find Rebecca and storage boxes, she instead found Victoria in a simple black dress, standing beside a small table set for two. "What is this?" Sophia asked, though her smile suggested she had some idea. "An apology," Victoria said. "For all the times I tried to impress you instead of just being honest with you." They ate the meal Victoria had prepared herself. Not the elaborate cuisine she might have ordered from a restaurant, but simple comfort food that spoke of home and care. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, Marcus's favorite, made with the kind of love that turns ordinary ingredients into something sacred. As they ate, Victoria told Sophia stories she'd never shared, about the woman who'd run the last foster home she'd lived in, who'd taught her that food made with care tasted different than food made for fuel. About how she'd never understood that lesson until she started cooking for Sophia and Marcus, how every meal had become an act of devotion. "You changed me," Victoria said as they shared a slice of the chocolate cake Marcus had insisted on helping to bake. Not just my life, but who I am at my core. I used to think love was about possession, about having something that was mine. But you taught me that love is about becoming someone worthy of being chosen. Sophia reached across the table and took Victoria's hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I need to tell you something, Victoria continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. That first night, when I was bleeding and you patched me up, you asked me why I kept coming around. I told you it was because you were different, but that wasn't the whole truth. She paused, gathering courage for the hardest truth of all. I kept coming around because for the first time in my life, I wanted to be different. Better. The kind of woman who deserved to be in the same room as someone like you. Victoria stood then, moving around the table to kneel beside Sophia's chair. From her pocket, she pulled out a simple platinum band set with a single blue sapphire, the exact shade of Sophia's favorite color. I'm not going to ask you to marry me, Victoria said, and Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. Marcus already did that for me this morning and you said yes. So instead, I'm going to ask you something harder. Victoria took Sophia's left hand in both of hers, her voice dropping to a whisper. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice? Will you let me be Marcus's other mother, officially and forever? Will you trust me with your hearts, both of you, even though I'm still learning how to be gentle with precious things? Through her tears, Sophia laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from pure joy breaking free from a too full heart. Victoria Romano, you've been proving yourself worthy every single day for months. The answer is yes to all of it, forever and always yes. The ring slid onto Sophia's finger like it had been made for her hand, which it had. Victoria had spent hours with the jeweler getting every detail perfect. As they kissed in that candlelit chapel surrounded by blue flowers, both women felt the final pieces of their new life clicking into place. Later, they would tell people that Marcus proposed to them both, which was true enough. But in that moment, it was just two women who had found their way to each other through darkness, sealing their promise with tears and laughter and the kind of kiss that writes itself on your soul. When they arrived home that night, they found Marcus waiting up despite his bedtime, bouncing with excitement. Did she say yes? Are we a real family now? He demanded. Victoria knelt down to his level, showing him the ring sparkling on Sophia's finger. We were already a real family, sweetheart. Now we just have the paperwork to prove it. Marcus threw his arms around both of them, and in that moment, Victoria finally understood what Marco had meant all those years ago when he talked about having something worth living for, worth changing for, worth being better for. Victoria approached proposing to Sophia with the same meticulous planning she'd once brought to hostile takeovers, but with entirely different stakes. This wasn't about winning or acquiring something, it was about offering everything she had and hoping it would be enough. She spent weeks consulting with Marcus, who took his role as co-conspirator very seriously. Together, they planned something that would be meaningful to Sophia without being overwhelming, romantic without being ostentatious. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Victoria would recreate their first real moment of connection. That night in the hospital when Sophia had cleaned Victoria's wound and they'd talked honestly for the first time. But instead of violence bringing them together, it would be love keeping them together. Victoria arranged for a private dinner in the hospital's old chapel, a space that was no longer used for services but maintained its quiet, sacred atmosphere. She had it filled with the blue hydrangeas Sophia had once thrown away, but arranged now with the kind of thoughtful beauty that spoke of genuine care rather than desperate pursuit. The hardest part was getting Sophia there without raising suspicion. Victoria enlisted Rebecca, Sophia's cousin and fellow nurse, who told Sophia she needed help moving some boxes in the old chapel after their shift ended. When Sophia pushed open the heavy wooden doors, expecting to find Rebecca and storage boxes, she instead found Victoria in a simple black dress, standing beside a small table set for two. "What is this?" Sophia asked, though her smile suggested she had some idea. "An apology," Victoria said. For all the times I tried to impress you instead of just being honest with you. They ate the meal Victoria had prepared herself, not the elaborate cuisine she might have ordered from a restaurant, but simple comfort food that spoke of home and care. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, Marcus's favorite, made with the kind of love that turns ordinary ingredients into something sacred. As they ate, Victoria told Sophia stories she'd never shared, about the woman who'd run the last foster home she'd lived in, who'd taught her that food made with care tasted different than food made for fuel. About how she'd never understood that lesson until she started cooking for Sophia and Marcus, how every meal had become an act of devotion. "You changed me," Victoria said as they shared a slice of the chocolate cake Marcus had insisted on helping to bake. "Not just my life, but who I am at my core. I used to think love was about possession, about having something that was mine. But you taught me that love is about becoming someone worthy of being chosen." Sophia reached across the table and took Victoria's hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I need to tell you something," Victoria continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That first night, when I was bleeding and you patched me up, you asked me why I kept coming around. I told you it was because you were different, but that wasn't the whole truth." She paused, gathering courage for the hardest truth of all. "I kept coming around because for the first time in my life, I wanted to be different. Better. The kind of woman who deserved to be in the same room as someone like you." Victoria stood then, moving around the table to kneel beside Sophia's chair. From her pocket, she pulled out a simple platinum band set with a single blue sapphire, the exact shade of Sophia's favorite color. "I'm not going to ask you to marry me," Victoria said, and Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Marcus already did that for me this morning and you said yes. So instead, I'm going to ask you something harder." Victoria took Sophia's left hand in both of hers, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice? Will you let me be Marcus's other mother, officially and forever? Will you trust me with your hearts, both of you, even though I'm still learning how to be gentle with precious things?" Through her tears, Sophia laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from pure joy breaking free from a too full heart. "Victoria Romano, you've been proving yourself worthy every single day for months. The answer is yes to all of it, forever and always yes." The ring slid onto Sophia's finger like it had been made for her hand, which it had. Victoria had spent hours with the jeweler getting every detail perfect. As they kissed in that candlelit chapel surrounded by blue flowers, both women felt the final pieces of their new life clicking into place. Later, they would tell people that Marcus proposed to them both, which was true enough. But in that moment, it was just two women who had found their way to each other through darkness, sealing their promise with tears and laughter and the kind of kiss that writes itself on your soul. When they arrived home that night, they found Marcus waiting up despite his bedtime, bouncing with excitement. "Did she say yes? Are we a real family now?" he demanded. Victoria knelt down to his level, showing him the ring sparkling on Sophia's finger. "We were already a real family, sweetheart. Now we just have the paperwork to prove it." Marcus threw his arms around both of them, and in that moment, Victoria finally understood what Marco had meant all those years ago when he talked about having something worth living for, worth changing for, worth being better for. Planning a wedding when one of you has no family and the other has a 6-year-old with very strong opinions about everything is an adventure in compromise and creativity. Sophia wanted something simple, a small ceremony with close friends, maybe in the hospital chapel where Victoria had proposed. Victoria, despite her newfound appreciation for simplicity, couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia deserved something more elaborate, more special. Marcus settled the debate with the wisdom only children possess. "Why don't we have 2 weddings? A little one here and a big one somewhere beautiful." And so they did. The first ceremony was exactly what Sophia had envisioned, intimate and meaningful, held on a Saturday morning in the hospital chapel with Rebecca and a handful of close friends as witnesses. Sophia wore a simple cream dress that made her look like sunlight, while Victoria chose a midnight blue suit that brought out her eyes. Marcus served as ring-bearer, best man, and flower boy all at once, taking his responsibilities so seriously that he practiced walking down the aisle for weeks beforehand. When the moment came, he performed his duties with the gravity of a diplomat, then whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Now you have to kiss her." The second ceremony, the big one Marcus had insisted on, took place a month later in the gardens of a villa outside the city. This was Victoria's gift to Sophia, a chance to celebrate their love surrounded by beauty and surrounded by everyone who mattered to them. Elena, Sophia's mother, wept through the entire ceremony. She'd been skeptical of Victoria at first. What mother wouldn't be when her daughter fell in love with someone from that world? But Victoria had won her over the old-fashioned way, through patience and genuine care for Sophia and Marcus. I officiated the garden ceremony myself, something I'd never done before but couldn't resist when Victoria asked. Standing before these two women who had found their way to love through loss, betrayal, forgiveness, and choice, I felt the weight of witnessing something truly sacred. Marriage, I said as they stood hand in hand in the dappled sunlight, is not just about loving someone at their best. It's about choosing them every day, especially when they're at their worst. It's about building something together that's stronger than either of you could create alone. I looked at Victoria, remembering the broken woman who had sat in my study months ago, terrified of her own feelings. Victoria, you came to love believing you had nothing to offer except your past mistakes and your determination to be better. But you brought so much more, your strength, your loyalty, your capacity to learn and grow and change. You brought a love so fierce it transformed not just you, but everyone around you. Then I turned to Sophia, this remarkable woman who had seen past Victoria's armor to the heart beneath. Sophia, you brought the rarest gift of all, the ability to see someone's potential and love them into becoming their best self. You didn't try to change Victoria. You simply loved her enough that she wanted to change herself. When they exchanged rings, matching platinum bands engraved with the date of their first meeting, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. But the moment that broke everyone's heart in the most beautiful way came when Marcus stepped forward with a third ring, a small band he'd helped pick out himself. "This is for me," he announced solemnly, "because I want to be married to both of you too." Victoria knelt down to slip the ring onto his small finger, her voice thick with emotion as she said, "Now we're all married to each other, forever and ever." The reception was everything a celebration should be, full of laughter, dancing, and the kind of joy that comes from witnessing love triumph over fear. Victoria danced with Marcus to a jazzy version of "You Are My Sunshine," both of them giggling as she spun him around the dance floor. Later, she and Sophia swayed to Ella Fitzgerald's At Last, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. But for me, the most moving moment came during the speeches. Rebecca stood up with a glass of champagne and tears streaming down her face. "I've watched my cousin Sophia be strong for everyone else her entire life," she said. "She was strong when Marcus was born, strong when her brother died, strong through every challenge life threw at her. But I'd never seen her be happy, really, truly happy, until Victoria came into her life." She turned to Victoria, raising her glass. "Thank you for giving my cousin permission to be soft, to be vulnerable, to let someone else be strong for her sometimes. And thank you for loving Marcus like he's your own, because he is now, in every way that matters." As the sun set over the garden and the last guests danced under string lights, Victoria and Sophia sat with Marcus asleep between them, watching their new family celebrate around them. "No regrets?" Victoria asked softly. Sophia looked at her wife, and smiled. "Only one," she said, and Victoria's heart skipped before Sophia continued. "I regret that it took us so long to find each other." Victoria kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her hair mixed with the evening air. "We found each other when we were ready," she said. "Not a moment before, not a moment too late." 5 years later, I sit in my garden watching Victoria push Marcus on the swing set she installed last summer, and I marvel at the transformation love can work on a human soul. Marcus is 11 now, tall for his age and sharp as his mother, with Victoria's stubborn chin and Sophia's compassionate heart. He still wants to be a doctor, but now he talks about opening a clinic in underserved communities, combining his mother's calling with his other mother's business sense. Victoria has built a new empire, this one entirely clean and focused on healthcare consulting. She helps hospitals improve efficiency and patient care, using the strategic mind that once navigated dangerous waters to navigate insurance bureaucracy and government regulations instead. She's found a way to honor both her past and her future. The skills she learned in darkness now serve the light. Sophia has become the head of nursing at Metropolitan General, a position she earned through competence and compassion rather than politics. She still works too many hours, but now she comes home to a family that takes care of her as much as she takes care of everyone else. They've given me something I never expected to have at this stage of my life, grandchildren. Not biological ones, of course, but family is about choice as much as blood. Marcus calls me Nana Isabella, and when Sophia was pregnant with little Elena 2 years ago, I was the first person they called from the hospital. Ah, yes, Elena. Named for Sophia's mother and blessed with Victoria's green eyes and Sophia's stubborn streak. At 3 years old, she already has both her mothers wrapped around her tiny finger, and Marcus treats her like a precious treasure he's been entrusted to protect. Watching Victoria learn to be a mother to a newborn was almost as entertaining as watching her learn to cook. She approached diaper changes with the same intense focus she'd once brought to contract negotiations, and she could spot a dirty diaper from across a room with the precision of a sniper. But the real revelation was watching her with a colicky baby at 2 in the morning. Victoria, who had once commanded rooms full of dangerous men, would pace the nursery for hours, singing lullabies in Italian and Spanish, her voice rough with exhaustion but infinitely gentle. "I never thought I'd be good at this," she confessed to me one afternoon, Elena sleeping peacefully in her arms after a particularly difficult night. "You're not just good at it," I told her. "You're extraordinary at it. Because you love them so completely that everything else becomes secondary." The family has its rhythms now, the comfortable patterns of people who have chosen each other every day for years. Saturday morning pancakes that Victoria has finally learned to make without burning. Sunday afternoon visits to my house where Marcus helps me in the garden while the women drink tea and Elena naps in the sunshine. Weekday evenings where they take turns reading bedtime stories, their voices blending together in the kind of harmony that only comes from practice and devotion. There have been challenges, of course. Victoria's nightmares still come sometimes, though less frequently and with less intensity. Sophia still works too hard when she's worried about something, and Marcus still asks difficult questions about his Uncle Marco and the world his other mother used to inhabit. But they face everything together now, these 3 souls who found each other against all odds and chose to build something beautiful from the wreckage of their separate pasts. Last month, Marcus asked Victoria if she missed her old life, if she ever wondered what would have happened if she hadn't changed. Victoria was quiet for a long time, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Finally, she pulled him onto her lap. He's getting too big for it, but he still allows it sometimes, and looked into his eyes. "I think about it sometimes," she said honestly. "But missing something and wanting it back are different things. I had power before, but I didn't have purpose. I had money, but I didn't have meaning. I had respect, but I didn't have love." She gestured around their living room, with its comfortable furniture and Elena's toys scattered on the floor, Sophia's medical journals stacked on the side table next to Victoria's business magazines. "This is better," she said simply. "Not easier, but better. Because everything I do now matters to people I love." That night, after the children were asleep, I found Victoria and Sophia on their porch swing, Sophia's head on Victoria's shoulder as they watched the stars come out. "Any regrets?" I asked, the same question Sophia had asked Victoria on their wedding night. They looked at each other and smiled, that wordless communication that comes after years of partnership. "Only one," Sophia said, echoing her words from 5 years ago. I regret that Marco never got to meet Victoria, never got to see what we built together. He would have loved this family we've made. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, as they always did when Marco was mentioned. He's here, she said softly. In Marcus's kindness, in the way you see the best in everyone, in the second chance I never thought I deserved. He's here. And he was. I could feel it too. The blessing of a brother who had seen the potential for love in two broken women and trusted that they would find their way to each other when the time was right. So what have I learned, watching this love story unfold in my own garden, seeing two women transform themselves and each other through the simple act of choosing love every day? I've learned that the strongest love isn't the kind that strikes like lightning, sudden and overwhelming and burning itself out in a blaze of passion. The strongest love is the kind that grows like a tree, slowly, steadily, putting down deep roots and weathering every storm. Victoria and Sophia didn't fall in love. They grew into love, day by day, choice by choice, until they couldn't remember who they had been before they were together. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or even about vows spoken in front of witnesses. Family is about showing up, consistently and without reservation, for the people who matter most. It's about choosing to love someone not just when they're at their best, but especially when they're struggling to be better. Marcus understood this instinctively, accepting Victoria into his life not because she was perfect, but because she loved him and his mother with a fierce devotion that made him feel safe. Elena will grow up never knowing a time when both her mothers weren't there, never doubting that love can take many forms and still be absolute. But perhaps most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be. Victoria was 40 years old when she met Sophia, convinced that her past had written her future in unchangeable ink. She believed that some transformations were impossible, that some people were beyond redemption. She was wrong, gloriously and completely wrong. Every day, Victoria makes choices that honor the woman Marco believed she could become. Every day, she proves that love can indeed conquer the darkness, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through the quiet persistence of choosing kindness over cruelty, vulnerability over armor, connection over isolation. And Sophia? Sophia learned that being strong doesn't mean carrying every burden alone. She learned that accepting help isn't weakness, that letting someone else be strong for her sometimes only makes her stronger in return. She learned that love multiplies rather than divides, that loving Victoria didn't diminish her love for Marcus, but expanded her capacity for love entirely. As I write these words, I can hear them in the kitchen, Victoria helping Elena with her finger painting while Sophia packs Marcus's lunch for tomorrow. It's a Tuesday evening, nothing special, just the ordinary magic of a family going about the business of loving each other. Victoria's voice drifts through the window, gently correcting Elena's technique. Remember, little one, we keep the paint on the paper, not on the table. Sophia's laugh follows, warm and rich. Says the woman who got more paint on herself than Elena did. Marcus chimes in from wherever he's doing homework. Mom, can you help me with this math problem? And Victoria, don't let Elena eat the paint again. This is their symphony now, voices layered over each other in the comfortable chaos of family life. This is what Victoria fought for, what Sophia chose, what they built together from love and stubbornness and the radical belief that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. I am Isabella Castellano, and I have seen many kinds of power in my lifetime. I've seen the power that comes from fear, the power that comes from money, the power that comes from secrets and leverage, and the ability to destroy what others hold dear. But I have never seen power like the power that comes from love freely given and gracefully received. I have never seen strength like the strength that comes from choosing vulnerability, from opening your heart to another person and trusting them to handle it gently. Victoria and Sophia possess that power now, that strength. They wield it not to conquer or control, but to create, to build a family, to raise children, to make their corner of the world a little brighter and safer and more full of love. And as I sit in my garden, listening to their evening symphony and watching the stars come out over the city we all call home, I know that Marco would be proud. His sister found love. His nephew has two mothers who adore him, and the woman he believed could be redeemed has redeemed herself beyond his wildest dreams. This is what love looks like when it wins. Not perfect, not without struggle, but absolutely, completely, eternally worth fighting for. The end.